Hey, what are you doing? Hey everyone, welcome back to Hey, What Are You Doing? A podcast with me, Becca G. Today I have a very special guest on. His name is John, and he is the other Mount Olive podcaster who's been doing it for way longer than I have, obviously. And he just let me know that I can ask him any and all questions. So, John, you best believe I will be asking you all the questions. So, hello, John.
Hello. Glad to be
Yay.
here.
Welcome to Hey, What Are You
I can't
Doing?
wait to be on Hey, What Are You Doing? I have a show called What's That Like? And it's all
Yes.
based on, you hear somebody tell you something interesting, you're like, "Whoa, what's that like?" Right? You chase a
Yeah.
tornado, what's that like? Chase UFOs, what's that like, right? Or you have a
Yeah.
podcast. What's that like, Becca? So this is fun. This is great to be
Yes.
here.
We just recorded my episode with John right before this recording. So everyone, it's a collab. It's my first ever joint podcast recording. So this has been fun. Like John said, he has a podcast called What's That Like? And we'll dive into it more, I'm sure. But I would like to ask who has been one of the most interesting people you've ever like when you say someone you interviewed someone who chased a
Yeah.
UFO. What?
Yeah, so he was very interesting. And this is where, you and I were kind of talking before, Becca, about getting guests, right? And much like you, it's like get the people you know, get comfortable with what you're doing.
Mhm.
People say no to you. And then when you build a show, it gives you the power to reach out to somebody you don't know that might be an expert in their field somewhere. So I reached out called it was about the Black Triangle UFOs. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. David Marler was his name. But we're getting deep already. In like January
Mhm.
of 2000, in this area, there was a mass UFO sighting, which you probably don't remember because you were like, what, 7 or something like that? 9?
9.
Okay. So it was over the middle of the night, but like 6 different police agencies saw this thing and they made a TV show about it. And the lead investigator
Wow.
for Illinois was this guy named David Marler, who lived in Edwardsville at the time. And since he's become like a nationally known UFO researcher. So when I felt like when I reached out to him, I had to have a show established, and he
Mm.
came on, and it was a great show, an hour and a half. But he's just one person, right? Once you get into this, you stories just find you. You'll read something in the
Mhm.
newspaper, you'll see somebody, had a story about something, and you're just like, that is a good podcast episode, and that's a story that needs to be told. For instance, like when the Coliseum burned back in 2013, I
Mm.
think it was, that was a huge news in Central Illinois because the Coliseum didn't mean much to people maybe of your generation, but for the folks that
Mhm.
were my generation on up, it was like the place here in Macoupin,
Mhm.
Montgomery, Madison County that you went and saw big bands. It would have been like a big venue for the biggest hits, the biggest stars of the day to come. So bigs like that, you find people that are interesting, and the next thing you know, you're having an hour-long conversation and learning something about it. And the best part about a podcast, it's a document, right? You might read a newspaper
Mhm.
article about something and it lasts for, I don't know, 400 words and a couple of quotes. Put it to podcast, and all of a sudden you've got something that's going to live for a long time. And that's really what I'm trying to do with my show.
Yeah, and you give people the opportunity to get more in depth with their answers rather than just a quote or two from an
Yeah,
article. You can
in
learn
proper
more.
context. Yes.
Well, that's a little bit about John's podcast, and I'm sure we will talk about it even more with our questions. But we're going to get started with some fun questions first, like I do. John, if you could swap lives with any character from a TV show or movie for a day, who would it be and
So
why?
this is a great question, Becca, and I'll tell you why. Because when I don't do it anymore, maybe I should bring it back. But on my show, when I used to be audio only back in the 2010s, we'll say, I used to have a series of questions called the WTL5. What's that like? 5. It was 5 questions I would ask people, just like you're doing, to get to know them a little better. And the question I would always ask is, what TV show or movie would you be a character on? So I wouldn't be
Mm.
swapping lives with someone or swapping to be that character, but it'd be like, what TV show would Becca be on, or what movie would be the character? And I always said I would want to be one of the guys at Cheers, but I would want to be Norm from Cheers. So, if you remember, Cheers was a show from the 80s and 90s set in a bar in Boston. And Norm was just at the corner of the bar that watched everything go by. He and his best Clavin, the mailman, just sat there and commented on the craziest stuff. And every time Norm walked into the bar, he'd say, "What's going on, everybody?" And the entire bar would scream, "Norm." So I'd want to be Norm. I
Yes.
would want to be Norm.
That
Yeah.
is that's a good one. We actually went to Cheers when we were in
Yes.
Boston.
Yeah.
It was under construction, unfortunately, but we did get to go down into it.
And like
So
it
yeah,
does on
that
TV, because I've been there as well.
it does
Yeah.
it. It does.
But no Becca and no her. It'd be like me and James Adden sitting at a bar just watching the world go by. That's the way I would describe
Wow, it really would. That's actually a really good comparison. Okay, well, we gave a little preview. If you listened to John's episode or my episode on John's podcast first, we gave a preview of this question. But if you had to eat only one food for the rest of your life, but it had no negative health effects, what would you choose?
If before, and I'll give it again, is there's a place in Waterloo, Illinois, which is just far enough from me that I won't go there very often, but it is a destination when I do. There's a pizza place there called Hopskeller. And Hopskeller's right on the square in Waterloo. And it's a microbrew. They've got some local spirits there from Stumpy Spirits, which is great. And they also have wood fired oven pizza. And it's the best. If you're in the Edwardsville area, you've got Peel, which is good. I'll say it's great. There's no kind of prefer. I think it's just a unique place. And thank God, like you said, with no negative health effects, Becca, because
Yeah.
it's far enough away from me that I'm only going there maybe 4 or 5 times a year instead of every week.
How far is Waterloo from here?
Well, Waterloo is if you go down to Columbia. So if you're in the St. Louis area and you've got the 270 loop, you would get off the two at Columbia, Illinois, and it's maybe 15 minutes south of there.
Wow, you know what, John? Carrie is getting married at the Abbey in the Columbia, so I know where I'm going
Yes.
while we're
Yeah.
there.
And between, there's another plug. I'm giving plugs to local businesses that I like. Between Columbia and Waterloo, there is a distillery there called Stumpy's Distillery. It's been around for 7 or 8 years now. And they have the
Okay.
best peach vodka. You can buy it in all your local
Oh.
stores. And I know you're not a drinker, Becca, but for those of you that like, a nice cocktail every now and then, there's
Yeah.
Stumpy's Peach Vodka is made with peaches from Eckert's. So it's all local,
Oh,
grain to
fun.
glass right here in
Yeah.
Illinois.
And if anyone's listening that will be at Carrie's wedding and you need something to do like the night before, head over to
Yep.
Waterloo, go to Stumpy's, go to Hopskeller. There you
Stubborn
go.
German.
John just planned your
Stubborn
itinerary.
German's right there too. A lot of people love Stubborn German.
Perfect. Carrie was actually a little worried about people having things to do the night before, so we
You
figured
figured it
out
out.
for
You're
her.
there.
Okay, and then the last fun question is what is your favorite TV show, movie, book, all three, just one, whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, this is a little tougher, but because I'm not, I'll start off by answering your question. True Detective, the latest True Detective, Corey, my wife and I
Mm.
watched. That was really good. It's a little freaky for me in terms of I'm not a big murder show person, but
Mm.
it's a good story. I ended up loving the ending, so that was good. Mostly, I'm a YouTuber. So Corey will leave the
Okay.
room, and what we always joke about is she will leave the living room and say, I'm going to bed. I'm going to go do my research. And what that means is she will start watching old Datelines and murder shows. And I always say she's in there researching ways to, dispose of a body at some point in her life. But she will leave. And then I just generally click on YouTube and I start following whatever the algorithm starts pointing at me, whether it's home improvement tips, podcast
Mm-hmm.
stuff about NASCAR, the Pittsburgh Steelers, or Edward Van Halen, whatever I'm interested in, that's what I'll end up start watching. There's a number of channels I subscribe to there. And so I'm a YouTuber mostly. The show that I always come back to it's 25 years old, I think this year, or 24. And it's the one
Mhm.
show I would say the Knowles family still watches together, even if we all aren't in the same place. And it's Survivor. It's silly, it's
Mm.
fun. My kids grew up on watching it. I always wanted to go on the
Mhm.
show, and I'm just too damn old. I don't think I could do well out there because I always get rid of the old guy first anyway, and I'd be gone.
Oh.
So no, why put myself through starvation and physical, whatever you want to call it, to make that happen.
Mhm. Carrie and Amy watch it religiously, and they'll text about it in our group text. And I'll because I don't during COVID, Carrie and I lived together and we binge watched a lot of it, but I don't watch it anymore. But they'll like text about it and they'll be like, "Did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this?" Okay, well, we're going to get into some, like I call them, deeper questions now about John. So, in 3 words, how would you describe your current phase of life and what's the main thing filling your time these days?
Well, 3 words. I'm going to go 4 words. Will you give me a word? I'm going to say knowing who I am.
Yeah.
Right. I'm in my mid
Mhm.
50s now, and
Mhm.
one thing I will say is I really just know who I am at this point in my life. And when you
Mhm.
think about, as you are, I don't want to give your age away, but you're younger than me, right? And as you're growing up, I mean, as you're getting older, you try to really figure out what it is life is about. What are the important things? What are the things that really have meaning? And what are the things that you shouldn't have worried about so much? And at this point in my
Mhm.
life, I've got my priorities very straight, right? It's about family. It's about making sure that we've covered all the bases. It's about knowing what to pay attention to in life and what not to, right? So we're season, it's 2024. And at the end of the day, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter which one of these two old white men gets elected, by and large, your life isn't going to be that much different. Right. Some little policies that could affect you in some way, shape, or form. But at this point, I realize that. I don't care I care which one of them gets elected, but this is not something that's going to dominate what I really spend my time thinking about. Conversely,
Mhm.
getting caught up in I don't even whatever it might be pop culture. I love pop culture. There's tons of things I could go on about all the things about pop culture, but these people are no different than you and I. So this whole thing
Mhm.
in the last 2 weeks with what's the princess's name from England, Becca,
Kate,
Princess Kate, and this doctored photo.
where is she?
Who gives a shit, right? I mean, it's like, why are we dissecting this
Yeah.
thing, and why is it in the first 20 minutes of the Today Show? I'm showing my age every single day, right? So these things that I really realize in life, my friend Don, who's the fire chief of Mount Olive, says this all the time. The older you get, and people that live in our area know this, the older you get, the only news you really need you get from WSMI on the radio. Who died?
Mhm.
All right. Fry, right? Are schools
Yep.
closed or are they not? You get the local weather. And if there's a boil order,
Mhm.
other than that, the
Yep.
rest of the world just doesn't really affect your life that much. And so when you get older, you kind of realize this and you kind of get set in what is important and what's not. And that's where I'd say that's my current phase of life. I'm also, for the first time in my life, in between jobs. That's 3 words. And I'm just enjoying this time in between because I know something's coming around the corner. So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, and you're enjoying, what we call it,
The
John,
spring of John.
the spring of John. Yeah. Okay, well, since you have talked about being in your 50s, what is a significant goal or dream you're pursuing, and what steps are you taking toward it?
So retirement, right? I'm 9, 10 years away from where I want to be. And I'll make this one
Mhm.
quick, right? We're not going to spend a lot of time on this question, but retirement, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to
Mhm.
doing what I want, when I want, and how I want, and not worrying about what's coming around the corner. And when I say retirement, what I really
Mhm.
mean is getting out of the corporate world and just doing what I want to do each and every day, which is what I'm doing right now in the
Mhm.
spring of John. I'm at the fire department a lot. I'm doing stuff like this podcast a lot, things to do and that give meaning to what I feel is the
Mhm.
area of which I live. So giving back a little bit in the ways that I can is really what's important to me.
Yeah. So you have some hobbies that I also, though, don't know if I would call all of these hobbies, being a firefighter one of them. I mean, I guess you could, but I feel like it's a very important thing in life. But what inspired you to start your current profession or hobby? And what is one new thing you've learned from it?
Profession, what I would say is where I've earned a living for the last how many years is I've worked in finance for a large national bank, and I've been basically I'll call it, for lack of a better word, a speaker slash trainer, where I would go around the country kind of informing people that work for this company about things that they can take advantage of, things that, tools, resources, people that can help them with their clients. And that's been fun. It really has been. I've enjoyed it for a long time. So what I call hobbies are the things that I do beyond, right?
Mhm.
I really draw a paycheck from. So when I was going over your questions, I said to my wife last night, here's the questions Becca asked me. And it's like, what is your current profession or hobby? One profession or hobby. She goes, like, one thing. It's more like hobbies. So that's kind of where I'm at. So outside of the podcast that we've been talking about, I'm in a band. It's called Retro Rocket. We've been around for 14 years right here in Central Illinois. We play a dozen shows a year,
Mhm.
supporting, maybe it's local fundraisers. We've done a lot of those, the homecomings, during the summer.
Mhm.
Smell funnel cake and corn dogs, then you'll probably find a band like Retro Rocket, right? We play
Mhm.
classic rock, things like that. It's a lot of fun. I started this in my 40s, right? I didn't start the band in my 40s. So I've brewed beer. Why? Because I wanted to try it, right? As you mentioned, I'm a firefighter here, 24 years in town. I geocache, which is a real old man to do, but I do it. If you don't know what geocaching is, look it up, geocaching.com. It's like a treasure hunt all throughout the world. And Corey and I around just taking road trips. It's like, hey, wonder if there's a geocache around here. And it usually
Yeah.
takes you to some place you wouldn't have ever seen. So, like last fall, you know where Pawhuska, Oklahoma is and why it's important. The Pioneer Woman, the TV show, she is from Pawhuska, Oklahoma, and has a
Hmm.
restaurant. You can go visit her ranch where she films. We're driving around in
Okay.
Pawhuska, which is a town no different than Mount Olive, 2,300, 2,500
Mhm.
people. And we get there, and the movie Killers of the Flower Moon that just came out, that all happened in that
Yeah.
town. They had just filmed it in
Oh,
that town. The story took place in that town. Never would have
wow.
known any of that, but there were geo to the story of the
Uh,
Osage Indians that I found really interesting. It took us to some like top of a mesa in the middle of nowhere with a flagpole, and there was like
wow.
a chief. I'll screw up the name, so I apologize. I think it was like a Chief Joseph or somebody was buried there, and you're like, why would I
Oh.
have ever gone here otherwise? But it's fun. It's something to do. It's free. It
Mhm.
doesn't take any time. I've remodeled every room in my house at this point. And what I learned when I hit my 40s, Becca, is I've got probably less time in front of me than I have behind me, at least in terms of being able to do what I want when I want health wise, right? Oh man, right? So it's like taking advantage of the stuff now while you can, because
Mhm.
time is more important than money to me at this point,
Mhm.
right? So that's it. It's like I do a lot of things because I want to experience a lot of things, and I want to experience places and meet people. It's just the fun
Mhm.
stuff that I try to do to keep my life full beyond just working every day.
Mhm. I don't blame you. I mean, I'm in my 30s, as we mentioned, early 30s, but I also feel that like I we've talked about it before on this podcast, finding the joy in the little things every single day, that's what's more important to me than most anything is just
Yeah,
happiness. And so doing what makes you happy, and if all of those things make you happy, then why not do all of those
correct.
things?
Get on it. Life is short,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And you don't sometimes it takes, a tragedy, I guess, to show it to you, but I feel like if you haven't realized it in the last 4 years, specifically 2020 and maybe 2021, that life is short, you just yeah, you got to get out there and find the joy, even if it's taking a walk every day with your dog that brings you joy, just
And
do
that's
it.
it. There is
Why
so
not?
much. We don't live in the most exciting part of the world here, but there is still
No, we
so
don't.
much to enjoy, right? I talked Hopskeller Place. Never heard of it. We found it, right? And those are the places that I like
Mhm,
to try to frequent, right? If I see something on Facebook, hey, a new place opened up and here's the story of this person, I'm more apt to want to go
mhm.
there than because a new Olive Garden opened up in Edwardsville,
Ugh.
right? So those are those
When I tell
those are
you,
things I look for.
I will probably never go to the Olive Garden. There are we have 3 locally owned Italian restaurants here in Edwardsville. There is no need to go to Olive Garden.
I hear you.
Oh, anyway, what is a common misconception about what you do, and how do you manage to balance this perception with your personal life?
So I said I'm an extroverted introvert, right? So
Mhm.
I'll ask you, would you think I'm extroverted, Becca?
Yeah.
Okay. And most people do, right? So I can turn it on. I can be the person in the room to lead something. I can stand in front of a bunch of people with my guitar and a microphone and try to entertain folks. In my work, I would stand on stage in front of 300 or 400 people and try to make funny and try to have fun and interview guests. But I would tell you, once the little after party or whatever you want to say, the cocktail hour starts, I will disappear faster than you'll even know where I went. We were the worst I ever pulled it on anyone. We were in New Orleans on Bourbon Street a
Hmm.
number of years ago, and with about, I don't know, 8, 10 friends. It's 8:30 at night. The party hasn't even started. And all of a sudden a cab pulled up, dropped 4 people off, and I just got in and left and didn't tell them. And they were
You pull that
They
Irish
yeah,
goodbye.
they were freaking out like I got abducted and kidnapped and rolled over or
Oh,
something in New
no.
Orleans, and I just went back to the hotel. I was good.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you. When my social battery is very low, I'm more of an introvert than anything, but when I put myself out there, it once I'm done, I need to go home and be alone. Don't talk to me. I just went to New Orleans in January. It was for a work trip, so I got a total of maybe 2 hours to explore. But while we were there, my mom and Amy both were like, if you do anything, you have to walk down to the Bourbon Street, you have to walk the French Quarter. Thankfully, our hotel was like right there, so it was just a 10-minute walk down the street. So I did get to go experience it. I don't think I'll ever go back.
It is a different place. So that
Mhm.
same night, I this is a family show, I'm gonna assume, Becca, but I'll tell you this story. This isn't getting too crazy. People just
Oh, it's actually I have it marked as explicit. You can talk about whatever
I'm
you
not going to
want.
be explicit, but I'm walking down the street and a woman walks up, shall we say, without a shirt on, but she had
Mm.
horns, full on deer antlers sticking out of her head. And I could have cared less what was going on below her neck. I could not figure out how these antlers were attached. And dare I say, I think they might have been real. They were that good. And I'm
Oh,
like, so when I think
wow.
say I've seen stuff I can't explain on bourbon, that's what I'm talking about. And after it rains, it smells like pee. So that's it.
Yes. And it when I was there, it was raining a lot, and it really smelled really not good. The culture, I will say the buildings are very
Yes.
cool down there. They are very different than what we have in middle of nowhere, Illinois, and the culture is very cool, the music is very cool. The city itself is gross.
It's below sea level.
It we are I mean, I work in St. Louis, so I am used to gross cities, but it was just dirty, and as we mentioned before, I don't drink, so I don't ever have a need to, like, go back to New Orleans. No offense to anyone who loves it down there. Different everyone's entitled to have their different
It is a
opinions.
neat culture, as you said. The architecture, the
Mhm.
people, the food, the music. I do enjoy all of that. But
Yes.
the time I want to spend seeing the freak show is I'm beyond that at this point in my
Yeah.
life.
I did look for some vampires down there, but I didn't see any, unfortunately. Um, okay, can you discuss a recent achievement or milestone and its impact on your views or life
Yeah, so
priorities?
I mentioned before I'm in between jobs. So after 25 years through no fault of my own, as one friend put it, the Price is Right game Plinko. I Plinkoed into the wrong flow chart. And eventually that little
Mm,
section of the business was reorganized and I found myself on the outside looking in. Blessing in
mhm,
disguise, I think. It's like I said, I've got some time off I didn't plan on, but I've got some stuff done here and I've been really busy for a month. It seems like every day I've got something going on,
mm,
but it allows you to realize again, what do I want to go back to? What do I want to do with the next 10 years or so I have to work or want to work? And what
mm,
does that look like? I'll cut to the chase. I'm close, I think, to another position. So,
mm.
I'm pretty content at this point. So it's a milestone that after 25 years of employment at the same place, it's ended. But I think it's
Mm.
the start of something new and exciting and, something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the next question. Tell me about a challenge you've recently overcome and how it contributed to your personal or professional
Yeah,
growth.
everything I was just saying, right? It's basically taking
Mhm,
stock of where you are in life and going, is this what I want to be doing? And where I was, it was
mhm,
not what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't as fulfilling the last, say, 12 months as it had been for years. So knowing that had a change accompanied with it, I'm very good with everything that's happened. It's been a chick kind of, come home, call your spouse and say, guess what? Just got laid off or displaced is the word
yeah,
we use in corporate America. What are we going to do about health insurance? What are all these things? What are the answers we need to have? So it's been an
mhm,
exploration of some of that stuff, but at the same time, I would say I've prepared for it, Becca. And that's the thing
mhm,
is I shouldn't say as you is I have aged. It's about getting closer to what you have to take care of some priorities. I'm not over my head in debt at this point. I'm not I need to work. I need health insurance. I need all these things to continue to go. But it's basically, the big rocks are behind me. Same age, 2 days different than your little sister
mhm.
Amy. Amy, hi Amy, love you. You spent so much time at my house, you felt like another Knowles kid, right? And at times I think, you fit in just perfectly with us, right?
Yep,
But Allison's 26, she's married, she's doing great. Adam's 20. He's working. He still lives at home, which is still great because I get to watch
mhm,
football with him, and it's awesome to have a buddy around here. But at the same time, my big responsibilities with them in terms of raising kids and getting them through school is over. So again,
mhm,
priorities you were talking about or that goal or dream is retirement. So it's like
mhm,
maximizing what I can save, setting myself up the best and hopefully staying healthy as long as I can.
and, just living in the spring of
That's
John.
it. The Spring of John. Is this going to be the title of the episode?
It will be. Has there been a pivotal moment that impacted your life's path, and how did it shape who you are today?
So to get a little personal, right? Yeah, I didn't
Mhm,
grow up this, you know, parents were married all the way through and everything was golden and rosy and happy and everything. My mom and I are great today. It wasn't necessarily always the case. My
mhm,
dad, he was a nice guy, but I don't really think he ever knew what being a dad meant, right? You
mm, mhm,
you and I talked on my podcast earlier today about how your parents showed up to every game no matter what.
mhm,
My dad never did that, right? And maybe most
mhm,
parents in that era didn't do that, and that's fine. But
mhm,
there's been things that happened, words that were said, whatever it was that I just felt like once I became an adult, I don't need that negativity in my life. You weren't really a kid, I didn't teach you as an
mhm.
adult either, right? So I would say it was like I learned to be a good dad by doing the opposite. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
tramp on my father's grave. I don't want to say that. Again, he was a veteran.
Mhm,
He served in the Vietnam War. He was a good friend to
mhm,
many people. He helped people in this area. It wasn't, he wasn't a bad person. It just
Mhm.
dad wise wasn't what really I felt like I needed. And when I became a parent myself, I didn't even know it was that bad until I became a parent myself. And I'm like, what the
Mm.
heck were you thinking? Right. So it was just like that was a shaper. And it also tells me it's just like things that kind of going back to what I was saying before, things that you think are kind of bad really aren't that bad. You can kind of move through everything. Issues that, you know, you just kind of sit and go, okay, I can deal with this. I've dealt with that. It's not that big of a deal to
Mhm.
through and just be a good human is really what my goal is day to day. And that's really what I've always tried to kind of strive toward.
Well, I would say, I mean, as we've discussed, I think on your podcast, I might be the granddaddy, the least because I was few years older than Allison and Amy, but I always remember you and Corey being very involved in everything. Like if Amy had a sporting event, you guys were there. If Amy and Allison had prom or whatever it might be, you guys were always there.
Hmm.
So from the outside, you are a good dad from what I saw growing
Well,
up.
good. Don't ever interview Allison. She'll talk about how. No, I
Well,
appreciate you saying that. It really is, and
yeah.
we tried to be, and we still try to be. Right.
Mhm.
That's what we're here for. Now that our kids are adults, and I'm sure your mom would say the same thing. Maybe you should say this. Get Sherry on to say some things. Right. So Sherry, if you're listening, you can come on this show as a fellow Gen
Yeah.
Xer. I'm not a boomer.
Yeah,
Don't
Sherry.
okay boomer me, but Sherry can come on this show and talk about that stuff as well.
Okay, well, you're working on a lot of things right now, lots of hobbies, like you mentioned. But what is a personal project or hobby that you're currently passionate about, and why does it excite you?
I'll start with this, Becca, because we're doing a podcast guest swap little episode here today.
Mhm.
So we're on my show earlier today. I'm on your show today. We'll release them later this week. So we'll get to know both
Mhm.
sides here. But I think it's finding what you're finding when you do these
Mhm.
episodes. You just referenced it a little bit ago. You're the grenadier I probably know the least. But it's not like I didn't know who you were or
Mhm.
what you were about. I just spent way more
Yeah.
time with Amy, and then I had a little sliver of time where Carrie, your middle sister,
Mhm.
there, I coached her in softball. For just a little bit of time, so I
Mm.
know Carrie a little bit better. But what I get out of
Mhm.
that podcast and what you're telling me you get out of it is you've known people, friends, family your whole life, yet you're still
Mhm.
getting a deeper connection as people and discussions and going deep in these things. It's like you just
Mhm.
asked me about, when I was talking about my dad. Most people I
Mhm.
know don't know that because I know about it. You would have never
Right.
known that had I not talked
No.
about it, right? And that's really
No.
what I enjoy is this process of podcasting. I'm certainly not doing it for the money because I'm making absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, it costs me money to do. But
Yeah.
at the
Yep.
same time, what I get out of it is the joy of something like we're having a conversation and going deep into somebody's life and what makes them tick. And I think what that means is someone that's listening to this probably relate to a little bit of it and go, okay, you know,
Mhm.
so John had a childhood that wasn't as rosy as everyone else's. Didn't ruin him, you know?
Yeah.
So when you think about and kids, can they be scarred and everything else? Sure, they can. But that doesn't mean they're not going to turn out to be good human beings, right? Because
Right.
they've gone through a little stuff in their life. It can work, it can be good. And the bottom line is if you lead with love and you love your family and you love people and you have a general sense of the world where you just leave it better than you found it, pick up the piece of
Mm.
help somebody out. You see somebody drop their wallet, don't think about, oh, I wonder how much money's in there. Get it back to them, right? So
Yeah.
it's those types of
Yeah.
things about being a good person in the world that really drive me. And the podcast is just winging it right now. I've got a little bit of a skill set for talking and asking the next question. And that's really what I'm using it for,
Mhm.
is to apply it to something that whether I've got 20 listeners, 200 listeners, or 2,000, or
Mhm.
20,000, it's something that you really can affect some people. And bottom line is give them some enjoyment for 45 minutes a
Mhm.
week. Eh, you know, you can do just as
Yeah.
much fun for them as they watched, some old murder show, Dateline, research. as we call it here.
Corey.
Yeah.
Oh, what is a piece of advice that has deeply influenced you, or what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Bet on you, right?
Mm,
So, Becca, you're in your early 30s. You're a homeowner.
mhm.
Big risk. It's easy to be a
Yeah.
renter. You don't get to nail holes in the walls all the time. But if
Mhm.
the furnace breaks, not your problem. At the same
Yep.
time, you're a homeowner that I don't know what you're spending in rent. Don't have to tell me. Don't care. But whatever you were spending,
Yep.
if you spend $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. It's gone. It's vapor. You got
Mhm.
nothing. Conversely, if you're spending $1,500 a month in a house payment or 2,000 or whatever it might be, you're betting on yourself, right? And
Mhm.
so the thing that I would say to that is whatever it is you want to do, if you enjoy it, bet on you that it's going to work out. And that, you get that, you got one trip around the world. As I said before, I'm in my 50s. I got less time front and behind me in terms of feeling good. I might live to be
Mhm.
106 or 107, but I'll guarantee you that time from 80 to 107 isn't going to be as fun as I'm going to have between 50 and 80, right?
Yeah.
If you've got opportunities, do it, right? I think you and I were
Mhm.
talking about maybe off air the eclipse, Becca, and you said, "Well, I can't see it
Mhm.
that day." And I'm like, "You got to find a way. It's so cool. It's just like one of those. You'll see it from wherever you are, but it won't be totality,
Mhm.
and that's a big difference. So
Mhm.
you can find ways to have experiences that don't hurt you financially or physically. Then take advantage of those. Live your best life. I always said this too. It was like life's can be about the money, right? Taking a job
Mhm.
is it going to pay me more money? And I say this all the time. Life's about the money until it isn't, right?
Mhm.
And for me, it's still important, but life's about life
Mhm.
to live, not live to work, right? You can get
Mhm.
yourself where you'll take another job for a few more dollars, but you'll be twice as frustrated. Was it really worth it? Right. So
Mhm.
it's that
Mhm.
type that I think you should attack life with. It's like, what can I do that gives me the most out of it? Whether it's you and your dogs and having fun and you're podcasting and you're blogging and you're doing all these things that give you joy with your family and you're with your sisters and your mom and you're having fun all the time. That's the
Mhm.
stuff that you should continue to do, right?
Mhm.
Making sure that you're, locked away in a career that doesn't bring you joy just because it's a paycheck that's better than the last one. Don't make that mistake.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that a lot of people you see, I mean, and they could be just social media posts, so take that as with a grain of salt, but you always see, like, when I asked my grandpa when he on his deathbed, like, what he regrets most in life, and it's, like, working all of the time and not spending as much time with the people I
Hmm.
love. So, you don't want to have that regret when you go.
No, none.
Got a little morbid, but, you want just you have to work, obviously, we have to work, it's society, we don't have a choice, really, our health insurance is tied to it, our bills are tied to it, but it don't I don't know, it's easier said than done to not be in a job that stresses you out, but if you are able to find the joy in things in life, just try to hold on to that
Absolutely.
because it's not all about the money. It is kind of, but not
No.
always. It doesn't always
Like I
have to
said,
be.
life can be about the money until it isn't. And it's what I was getting at, where I'm kind of content in this spring of John. The big me, right? I've raised my kids. We're doing good, right? The house
Yeah.
is almost paid off. So these big fears that you're just entering into, don't be too fearful. One thing I would say too, it's like, there's this old guy when I started where I worked 20 something
Mhm.
years ago, and he said his name was Tom. And he had this voice that was kind of about this. So I'm going to apologize. He goes, "If you want to be rich, stay in your house." And what he meant was, don't be trading up houses all the time and reset your 30-year
Mhm.
mortgage. Pay the sucker off, and you're going to be just fine. Hopefully, it's in a good neighborhood and you like your neighbors. But that's really
Yeah.
what I didn't think I didn't take it really that seriously until like I just go, I'm like, damn, that old son of a bitch was right. You know,
Yeah.
once you get your house the way you want it and paid off, you're like, honestly, life can throw you a lot of stuff. You still got your home.
Yeah, and that's I feel very privileged and blessed every day that, like, I the home buying process is was a nightmare. It was not fun, but the whole time I was stressed about it because I have to be out of the house I'm in now by March 31st. And so I was hitting crunch time, but as long as I had a roof over my head, which I would never not have one over my head, I didn't have to worry, right? I mean, I worried, but like what was there to worry about? I have a bed, I have a roof over my head, and even if I didn't have a house to live in, my parents were like, "You can come home." So
There's
like,
always home.
yeah. So I had a roof over my head, and I feel like that's the main thing in life is a bed and a roof that stops the rain from hit or the hail if you live in our area.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Thunderstorms.
that was
Crazy. Yeah.
so. Can you share an amusing or surprising experience you've encountered recently?
Yeah. As we mentioned, I'm a firefighter here in Mount Olive and have been
Mhm,
for 24 years. And most of what we do in the fire service is not related to fire. It's a lot of medical calls. We don't have an
mm,
ambulance. So anything where anybody's under some stress or they've got some health issues, yeah, whatever it might be, they'll call the fire department as first responders to go. A
mhm,
big part, the most stressing part of a lot of what happens here, and this is not a surprise to anyone, is
mhm,
the opioid pandemic,
mhm,
epidemic, whatever we want to call it. The opioid epidemic is real, right? If you've watched any of these shows like Painkiller or Dope Sick, that stuff happens everywhere and it happens here too.
mhm,
So we do run a lot of overdoses and flyers, as we might call them, right?
mhm,
Folks that this happens to a lot. The abundance of Narcan, I think, has actually
mhm,
added to it because I think folks think they get a get out of jail free card.
mm,
I call for possible overdose at this place and went out there,
mhm,
and not to get into all the details, got there, assessed the situation, gave the patient Narcan, brought her back from the dead. Essentially, that's the miracle of this stuff. And
mhm,
we put her in the ambulance, and she's gone. And maybe a
mhm.
month, maybe 2 months later, as you know, the fire department has fish fries from time to time. And
They're my
I think
favorite.
I probably saw you this day, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong. But had a fall festival last year,
Mhm,
and we're up there frying fish for the fall festival, and I'm standing at the front as I'm wanting
mhm,
to do and taking money and delivering orders and saying hi to people or whatever. And this woman
mhm,
just walks up out of the crowd, and she says, "Do you know any of the people that were on a call at this place back in this
mhm,
week of August or whatever?" And I go, "Well, what was the call for?" And she told me, and I'm like, "Actually, I do know who it was. It was me." And she goes,
mhm.
"I just wanted to thank you for saving my life. I've been 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, sober. I wouldn't be here today if it
Oh.
wasn't for you. And every day I have going
Mhm.
forward, was because of you." And I was just like, I'm about burst into tears, right? So
I'm sure.
so at this point, you're like, that's why I do it. Of the 10
Mhm,
times I do it where they just do it again or you never see them or they just continue the bad behavior or whatever it might be,
mhm,
it's easy to start to get jaded. But then you do that and you're going,
mhm.
man, you did make a difference for once, right? Of all the goofy
Yeah.
stuff that I do in life, whether it be this
Mhm,
podcast little thing or whatever, yeah, it's fun.
mhm.
You have some fun. You give a couple people laughs. This was a life changer. So
Ye
that's my answer for that one. It's surprising that it happened. It was cool that it happened. I'm thankful that it happened. I'm
Mhm,
thankful and praying this person is still
mhm.
walking around and doing well.
Yeah, that got me. Thanks,
Yeah,
John.
I try.
That's incredible. Like you said, for every 10 people that, keep doing it, the one life that you get to save, I'm sure feels
Well,
incredible. I
yeah,
can't even
she's
imagine.
doing it. She's doing the hard part, right? I just happen to be
Yeah,
there at a critical little moment where a few moments made a
yeah.
difference.
Yep, and that Narcan, that in that moment did make the difference, all the
Yep.
difference in her life, so that's fantastic. I feel I have always said this growing up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I for some reason, I know you, obviously you're a volunteer firefighter. It's not like I very personally know the volunteer firefighters in Mount Olive, but I have been on this soapbox my for a very long time. I'm like, why do they have to volunteer? Why can't we pay you? You guys are literally risking your lives to save other people. We should pay you.
Well, I'll dispel a myth. We're not 100 volunteer, but I'd say
Okay,
we get
okay.
t-shirt money out of it, right? So,
You should
so,
get like life-changing
so,
money out of it because you're saving
so for,
lives.
generally what happens, we do get a small stipend. It's really like it was clothing allowance, they would call it. So you ruin something, here's some money, you get t-shirt money. We get a few dollars a year. Then the state of Illinois this past year passed a law that gave us all a $500 tax credit. So we got to knock $500 off our Illinois tax. That's what the state of Illinois thinks of us. We're worth $500. But
No.
for the, we'll get it's an economics thing, Becca. I mean, the city of Mount Olive could not support a full-time fire department. Number one,
Right,
we
right.
do less than a call a day, right? So we
Mhm.
366 days this year, but
Mhm.
there's not enough work to make sure you've got 2 to 4 people on. So the
Yeah.
volunteers are there, as they've always been for 145 years now, to protect the citizens of the city in which we volunteer. That department that did 1 call, no calls, 3 calls, 5 calls. And then
Mhm.
I'll say there's about 5 of us that did well over
Mhm.
100, right? So in any organization, you've got I call them the STPs. And my friend Zach over in Hillsboro gave me this phrase: the same 10 people are
Ah.
probably doing most of it. So the STPs, no matter what organization you think about, they're the
Mhm.
ones that are carrying most of it, and then you've got the rest of the folks there. But it's a commitment. It's something I enjoy. It's stories like I just told
Mhm.
you that give me the joy to do it. It's the sense that it's my way to give back. It's a lot of things. It's more rewarding for
Mhm.
me. Some of the heartache. What I do?
Mhm. Mhm.
I went to a counselor once because of something that bothered me. It's all good. It's all good. We enjoy it. We
Mhm.
wouldn't do it if we didn't want to.
Well, props to you guys. You guys are very brave human beings, and I've always admired firefighters in general, but volunteer firefighters, man, just good job.
You got me tearing up now, Becca. See, this is how deep we
Sorry,
got on Hey, what are you doing?
didn't mean to do that. But it is a soapbox I have been on for years and years of my life, which is, like I said, kind of funny because it's not like I'm personally involved in it. So just, I'm an Enneagram 8, so it's the justice in me.
I don't know what that is, but I
um,
assume it's good.
yes, it is. Okay, well, we've got two more deep questions, and then we'll hit the rapid fire. And of course, my dog has decided to start eating right now
I couldn't
while we're
hear a
ending.
thing, but you go, Annie. That's life.
Okay, good. You can see her.
Hmm.
She's right here. And I'm surprised Stanley isn't around. He loves to make her mad while she's eating. Okay, so we got two more. So, how do you keep yourself motivated and inspired day to day?
I'm just a curious guy about the world and how things work.
Mhm,
There's nothing I don't think, I shouldn't say there's nothing. There's plenty of things I can't fix, but
mhm,
it's there's nothing I really don't. I want to understand everything as best I can, whether it's finance, whether it's the whole mortgage process, real estate. You know what? I can remodel my house. I've got a shed full of tools that I know how to use. I taught myself how to be a media person here and do a podcast,
mhm,
right? Self-taught guitar. I like to travel and see things, find interesting things, talk to interesting people. So every day something's going to change, right? And I can,
mhm,
I can. We were just talking about firefighting stuff on Thursday last week, the day of that all the storms hit,
mhm,
right? that was the least interesting part of my day. And I didn't plan for any of it. It had to deal with the health situations of people that I was like, wow, never thought I'd be dealing with this today, but was. Right. So
Mhm.
you know what each day is going to bring. So and you never know when something bad could happen. So enjoy it while you can and have fun with it. Find interest in things. There's something like Larry Rayburn. Larry. He's around your
Mhm.
age. He's a
I used to he actually his grandma lives right next
Yes,
to the
exactly.
house
His
I grew up
grandma
in,
Verna was your
and he
neighbor.
was
Yes.
yes, he was always there, and I always, for some reason, called him Stinky Larry.
Well, if the name fits or whatever, Stinky
Yeah,
Larry, I'll make sure I start calling it. But he's actually my cousin
perfect.
through marriage, right? And so he and I were talking
Okay.
one day not too long ago, and he goes, and we were talking about something about somebody became an ordained minister, and I'm like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
do that. And he goes, of course you would, because you do everything else. And I'm like, why not? It's a good piece of paper.
Yeah,
Somebody might need to get married. I'll do it. I would have done it.
and you could be there at the right
I would have
time.
done it when Allison got married, but Connor's father already was. I'm like, great, he's got it covered, you know? So it's
Perfect.
like, so Stinky Larry goes, yeah, you do it because you do everything else. Why not? So that's
Mhm.
the way I look at the world.
I mean, why not? Honestly, that's a good why question. Why not? Why not do it? Especially takes 5 seconds, right? Just to do it online. I think Carrie's trying to get Nathan to do it so that he can officiate her wedding next winter.
Well, if it falls through, give me a call.
Okay, I'll let her know. Put John on plan as the backup plan. Okay, we got one more. So is there something you have talked about all the things that you have tried, but is there something you've always wanted to try but haven't yet?
I want to travel more. Corey,
Okay.
you know, one of our shows we watch is Amazing Race. In the world, I'd have no desire to go to. Right? Have you ever watched that show?
Yes. I couple
Yeah.
times when
So when
growing
they
up.
end up somewhere over there in Southeast Asia, when they're driving around in tuk tuks with dirt streets, I'm good. Don't need to
Yeah.
go. But when they're traveling through Italy or Germany or Ireland or
Mhm.
something like that, looks pretty cool to me. I want to go back. I want to
Mhm.
go there where my ancestors came
Mhm.
from. I'd like to go to Alaska, right? Take a cruise or something.
Mhm.
So there's probably more travel things on my list than there are
Mhm.
things I haven't even thought about yet.
Those will just pop up day to
Yeah,
day. Well, Lisa and her husband did an Alaskan cruise last August. So if you need help with that, they can help you plan that. And then because Carrie is fighting to keep her status as favorite child in the family, she is taking my mother to Italy for retirement in May.
it's hard to compete with,
I know.
Becca.
I'm well aware. My mom keeps saying that she wants to go to this steakhouse in Edwardsville called
Mm-hmm.
Musali's or Moose
Musali's Prime.
what you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so me and Amy were like, "Perfect. We'll do that. Better than an Italy trip. We'll go to a steakhouse in Edwardsville." But, yeah, Sherry's going they're going to multiple places, but Italy is the main one, and she is in May. She's very
That's awesome.
excited.
And
So, you'll
have
have to
you
get some
broke
tips
this
from her.
news yet? You talked about it on my show, but Sherry retires soon, which is awesome.
She is retiring soon. April, I can't remember what the exact date is, before the eclipse because she had to retire so she could go travel wherever she needed to. And today we're recording on a Sunday, but it's her last weekend day. I've called her every day while she's at work this weekend to count down
That's awesome.
the weekend days. And my dad even counted them down for her too. I was like, everyone's so excited for you. She's it's kind of mind-blowing to think about that, like, for you being at the same job for 25 years, my mom being at the same job for I think it's been, like, 34 or 35 years, because my generation, we job hop often. 2 years is a long time to be in the same job for my generation. So the thought of being at the same place in the same job for 30 plus years is wild to
Yeah.
me. That is some
But I
dedication.
would tell you, you ask your mom, she didn't plan it that way. It's happened that way. She
Yeah,
liked where she
that's
was. She was
fair.
close to home, doing something she loved. Your mom
Mhm.
probably How many babies has your mother delivered in this
I
area?
don't know, I wish they would keep an tally of that. That would be kinda cool to know, you know, when you retire from that, how many babies you helped bring into the
Yeah,
world, but yeah, she's, you know, she's in single digits. I think she has 5 more working days
it's so good.
left.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Sherry
Okay.
G.
Yes, congratulations. So we're gonna get into rapid
Ooh,
fire.
is this a
I
game?
pulled Well, it's made to be a game, and the person who answers the quickest wins, but I just pull a card for you, and these are questions I haven't sent you that I don't know what they are, and I pull a card for you, and you just see if you can
Awesome. Because I'm
answer.
so good at lightning round.
Okay, so this is a new one. There are like 100 cards or more in this pack, and I have managed to pull the same one like multiple times. So this is a new one. What is your zodiac
I'm a
sign?
Virgo.
Okay, I know zero about
Me
zodiac
either. I
signs, so I
couldn't
don't know
tell
what
you
that
anything, but
means.
I know that's what I am. September
Perfect.
baby.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Mount Olive. Because everybody I care about's
Okay.
here.
That's a good one. Name a kids TV show that you secretly
Saved by
like.
the Bell. And
Oh,
I say that
yeah.
because it was a kids' TV show and I enjoyed it in my 20s.
Yeah.
If there's something today, I don't know, but no, we always watched Saved by the Bell back in the day.
Mhm. What is one thing people do that you can't stand?
Oof. I can't make this too rapid, but I'll tell you what it is. It's Facebooker, social media trolls, complainers, people that do
Mm,
nothing but go onto social media and bitch and moan about everything, yet do nothing
mhm,
to change the world in which they live. My favorite one
mhm,
is when they go on and they talk about how much money they spend in property taxes and they wish, and where is all this money going? And I can look up on the internet how much you pay in property taxes. And I'm like, oh, you're
mhm,
$386, and you want, a 2-lane concrete street in front of your house and, whatever. So those are the people I
mhm.
can't stand. That is what is my biggest pet peeve is Facebook trolls, people that have nothing good to
Uh-huh.
say ever and do nothing to change the world in which they live in a more positive way. And when they think they are, they'll say, "Hey, I did this today. Thank you.
You're like, "Good job."
Thank you. You posted on there that you left a tip for your server."
Yeah.
And I don't know because, and I didn't want to, but
Mhm.
yeah, there's my long answer to your quick question.
That's okay. That's a good one. The town Facebook page brings me lots of
Oh, yeah.
entertainment.
My favorite gif is the Jon Stewart with the popcorn.
Yeah. Yeah. When and where was the last time that you did a dance?
A dance. Like a dance, or just that I danced a little bit? What are you? The
Whatever you wanna
last time I
interpret it
really
as.
danced would have been my daughter's. No, did I dance at Amy's wedding with my wife? It might have been Allison's wedding. I'll go with that because I know for sure I danced with my wife and with my daughter Allison,
Perfect, perfect.
and we
What
danced
is
to
your
"Build Me Up, Buttercup."
Oh, that's cute. Aw. What is your go-to joke when someone asks you to tell one?
Ooh, God, I got a gazillion. Dad joke central here.
Yep.
The one I used, I'll tell you the last one. It's not my go-to, but the last one I used, I remodeled Allison's childhood room. So we
Mhm,
painted over the pink and blue walls, and then we tore down the old closet doors, and then I hung
mhm,
new sliding mirror closet doors.
mhm.
And I told my friends, I go, I'm thinking about starting a career installing these mirrored closet doors. To which you would say, why? And
Yeah, why?
because it's something I can see myself doing.
That is the epitome of a dad joke.
It's not the best. It's the latest. We'll go with
It's
that.
it's a good
Yeah.
one. It's a good one. Okay, and then the one I ended on, since we didn't bring her up at all, and I know your daughter is a Swiftie because
Yeah.
I've talked to her about it
Hmm.
before. What is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Shake It Off.
That's a good
And
one.
it's probably the one I know the best, but the
Mhm,
message is really what I would say there is the best, right?
mhm.
It's like, it doesn't matter, shake it off.
Yeah,
Whatever is going on, if it's not the end of the world, shake it off. But
"Shake It
but
Off," Taylor
but
Swift.
a question I used to ask people on my podcast, Becca, was what's the one song you're a huge fan of, know all the words to, but you wouldn't want anyone to know? And well, there were two. It was Mbop and Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen.
Oh, those yeah, those are good ones. I actually can't think of one that I know all the words to that I don't want people to know I know.
Yeah. And about a
You know what
late
I
40s guy singing,
Ye
I just met
Call Me
you.
Maybe.
This is crazy. Here's my number.
Well,
Call me maybe.
you you did have a daughter who grew up in the early
Yes,
2000s, so
that's true.
you didn't have a choice.
That's right.
Well, thank you, John, for coming on and having me on your podcast.
Becca, it has
Where
been
can
an absolute pleasure. I'm glad I broke the
Yeah,
Gen Xer bubble for Hey, What Are You Doing?
yes,
I hope
you
you
did.
can find some more old folks like me to come in and tell stories, right? But at the same, I love your energy. I love what you're doing. I
Thank you.
love, that I love that we're both podcasting now, right? I
Yeah,
think
this is
this is
fun.
so cool that you're actually doing this and moving it forward and having fun, and you're doing it for all the right reasons. We talked about my show about why you do this, and I think it's just phenomenal. And it's been my pleasure to be a guest on your show. I'm
Yes.
looking at the clock.
Thank
It might be your longest episode ever, and I can't believe that. I would have never predicted
Oh,
that.
no, no. I've had some hit 2 hours that
Oh,
I have to
okay.
then
Well,
cut down to an
then I'm
hour.
fine. We're good.
Yeah, you're good. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so look on YouTube first and foremost. You can find it under at What's That Like podcast, and then you can find What's That Like podcast on all your normal podcast channels. What's That Like on Facebook? I don't do Snapchat or X or any of that crap. I have a hard time keeping it up
Mhm.
enough. But by and large, yeah, the show's available weekly at this point. I need the YouTube subscribers. So go hit my channel and subscribe. I'm trying, we all about metrics back it up in the algorithm. So mine's a
Yes.
video and audio show. So on YouTube, you'll find me there and you'll see Becca's smiling face on there later this week.
Yay. Well, thank you again. I'm gonna let you go enjoy your Sunday, and I'm gonna go paint more of my closets.
Have fun. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
You're a
you.
homeowner. You're
Thank
great.
you. Thank
And
you.
I love your
And
show. Keep it up. Keep doing the good work.
thank you. Thanks for coming on and letting us know what you're doing.
My pleasure.